Hey, what's up, guys? How's it going? It's Dakota Fishman today, and I would like to kind of go over some tips and tricks in regards to how the Garrison trap works. Now, I know some people have been asking about it, but I figured, okay, hell, okay, you take your alternate account, all right, and the idea is that you're gonna have this account on at the same time as your main account, right? Now that's only possible if you're somebody like me who's using a PC and you're on an emulator and you've got not one but two tabs, so basically two emulators running at the same time. Because what this allows you to do in theory is what someone could do if they had two phones in their hands. Essentially, you can wait for somebody's march, okay, and as soon as you know, okay, all right, so let's say I've got, 9 million mine, all right? Most people don't look at that and go, okay, I'll just send 375,000 tier 4 at that. Okay, most people just don't even bother. They just go, oh, that's a small, tiny account, who cares? Well, the thing is, and this is what makes a Garrison trap work the way it does, is they scout it and they realize, holy mackerel, he has like 100 million resources on that account. It doesn't matter really so much on how many resources, it's more key to okay, lots of resources must be a thing is I'm sending a march, okay, on my main account, and it's going to get sent to the alternate account, and the idea being is that that alternate account has to stay in place until it decides to random and eat the march, because the idea is what'll happen is this march that is sent from the main account will get triggered first before the next march. So essentially, if say I have infantry marches coming through, then it's going to counter that and it's going to eat all of the infantry marches. Let it just be said that if you are going to trap, there are a couple of things to consider. And this is primarily kind of a quick overview of kind of what traps do. All right, is that essentially you don't show your gear, you're going to put your talents, you're going to basically, rather than go, cav in for range, you're just doing all three. You focus on the attack stats, not much else. You don't bother with squad defense at the end, and that's pretty much it. The main key factor in any one trap, depending on whether it's a solo trap or rally trap, is that they're usually, if it's a solo trap, they're trying to block 375k. That's the equivalent of like 3.7 million tier 1, 1.2 million tier 2, or about 660 to 670, but basically 700,000 tier 3. Okay? And usually, okay, it's the counter. All right, so you'll find that a lot of the time people will use a front line of tier 2, meaning that, maybe they'll have 1.2 million gladiators, but then they'll have 6 million archers and 6 million cataphracts, or vice versa. Not really necessarily a right or wrong answer to how you want to do that. You could be a cav frontline for all I care. It doesn't really matter so long as you know what you're doing. And understand that if you're in a cav phalanx, cav are going to get hit, vice versa. If you're in phalanx, you're in infantry, and vice versa. Now, having that said, one of the go-to tips for any one trap is you need to be well aware of a couple of things. The main thing is that if you don't have your research up to par, you're going to be at a disadvantage right from the get-go. I can tell you anybody 8 and higher is usually okay. 8 and lower, and you're going to have a hard-ass time playing the game. Not to say it's everything, but just know that it's going to be a pain in the ass. It'll depend on that composition a hell of a lot more if you are on the freaking verge of getting zipped. Now, having that said, okay, one thing that rally traps are real keen on, okay, is that their troop composition, right? Now, you've probably seen various types of rally traps out there. Most of them will have, 1.5 million and then 2.3 to 3 million tier 2. Some will go as high as, 5 or even 6 million tier 2. There's not necessarily a wrong answer. It's just that you need to be aware that might is the main concern with rally traps, the same way it is for solo traps. The main concern is obviously where can I reduce might and where can I add damage. It's not any more confusing than that. The only thing you need to know is that there is a limit at which eventually it's around 13 million or so, but that's the going number that you don't want to go over when you're defending in a certain front line. Because if you've got like 60 million tier 1, there's a certain point at which the morale will just drop, and so these units will effectively become useless. and you'll just lose a lot of them for practically not much gain, if any. Now, having that said, all right, one thing that is very, very important is that, if you want to do, let's say, a solo trap, okay, solo traps are real keen on making sure to have some resources already in bags. So if you have them already, I'd recommend kind of going ahead and kind of building up to where you are self-sustainable, and build up your bags. So that way, when you do decide to go trapping, you're going to depend on this in order to be able to heal, or you're going to need someone to help you out with that. Having that said, the next fact of order, right, is that you want to try to get attack bonuses where you can. So if you're not level 60 yet, you'll have to kind of look for troop bonuses and altar bonuses if you can grab them, because they're going to help out quite immensely. Something else that is pretty important is with a trap, you want to make sure that you've got the infirm space to cover. A lot of the time, I would say if you're not covering like 300 or and higher, you're gonna have a hard time from just taking hits as a solo trap. It's not impossible, but it's seldom happens in a way that you want it to. Like rally traps, especially, need to have an excess of 600k for an infirm space, which usually means you need to have all infirms. But that isn't to say that you can do something like I'm doing, where it's kind of a blend between just the right amount between infirmaries and banners. But just understand that there is a point at which you kind of do need to be at least considerate of that, and it all depends on what you really want to go after. Having that said, all right, the next thing is gear. On this topic, all right, traps are really well known for having mixed gear. Okay, and the reason being is pretty straightforward. If you're going to be a trap, a lot of the time you don't have the time to swap gear. So you'll find that a lot of people, what they'll do is they'll just try to make a set that kind of conquers everything, but not really conquer anything at all. Which, it works. You can build yourself fear drums for cavalry attack. You can get yourself, either a dragon's talon, a storm tacit, and you try to conquer all your demons at once. But here's where you may want to hear me out, which is to say that I really recommend somebody just do 2 unit types or 1 unit type as they're starting out. And I say this because for those of you that are just starting to kind of build up a set, you're really going to want to focus on really one set in the end, because really, if you're defending an infantry, you're going to want to defend an infantry. So why would you want to increase the stats that aren't really being used as much? Now, yeah, sure, okay, you could argue, all right, well, what if I want to go and defend in cav or range? That's great, no, but ultimately you want to be able to do the best that you can do. You don't want to spread yourself too far and thin. So one thing that I've done with my jewels is I kind of focus on the 1 unit type method of jewels inlaying, which is to say that I put a defense jewel where it relates to the 1 unit stat that I'm using, which in this case is cavalry, and then I'm getting my HP and attack. And if I really had a choice, I'd usually pick attack almost everything, and HP alongside it, and then defense as a last resort. You'll find that a lot of the time I'll even take champion jewels alongside HP jewels if I can get away with it. But the main thing being is that you're always trying to strive for the most that you can possibly do in terms of attack and HP, because those are really the only 2 jewels that really should matter. Having that said, that's kind of gear in a nutshell. Now, the next monster to kind of conquer then is the question of, okay, if I'm going to bait, how are you going to bait? Are you going to do it with an anti-scout, or are you not going to do it with an anti-scout? All right, the 2 playing strategies that go with this, and they kind of go hand in hand. To get kind of straight to the point, it's, if you're going to try and defend, say, in cav phalanx, and you're going to be sitting in familiar gear, for example, if you want to toy with your enemies, you might want to try and use something like, Wormbone Cornet or something like that to give them the impression that maybe you have range. Again, not necessarily a bad thing to have like a fake set, and I've seen people do it to give people the impression of using the counter type that you're using to counter. In other words, if I'm in range, they'll send infantry, and therefore if I'm in cavalry, it counters the infantry. That's the kind of the mindset that people have when they try swapping sets. Having that said, though, the main thing is that if you are going to swap over to, say, in my case, cavalry, right? The main thing at this point is that you want to focus primarily on your healing. Now, I would say, depending on the type of trap you're doing, if you're doing a solo trap, you're going to focus primarily on the healing to prevent multiple solos from crashing you. The next possible problem then is also then the question of, okay, well, if I'm eating multiple rallies, what do I do? More or less the same. You're just sitting there, pretty much sitting down, healing all the tier 2. But where it does begin to differ is, in the case of a solo trap, you're focused, you're going to sink some gems into healing your troops sometimes. And in the case of rally traps, it's almost a given. So just be aware of this. The next thing that I would say is that if you're a Garrison trap and you're trying out the new Garrison trap method that I strongly recommend everyone else to at least give it at least a try, is that the only thing I found that you need to be really wary of is just, like I was saying earlier, if you don't pick your randoms properly, you can get yourself capped, but you can also lose a shit ton of troops. So to kind of alleviate that, you kind of want to be able to, at certain times, it might be beneficial to kind of have a backup plan should you get yourself capped. And again, in those kind of situations, you're going to have to kind of be, omnipresent, I guess, and that you will have to be on your toes. If you get hit and start losing troops big time, you need to be able to shelter a lot of it. And that's why I say if you're a Garrison trap, don't be packing more than 1.5 million troops, because it's really hard to hide all of it. But just a word of caution for those out there that are interested in trying this out, because it can be a little dicey, I would say, if you do get capped. Having that said, though, the main focus for a Garrison trap is obviously distance, so you want to increase that timer, make sure that you're not trying to speed it up. So if you're trying to speed it up, you're doing the opposite of what you want. You want to make sure that you're not trying to speed that march up, so that way you're getting as much time as needed, so that when you can random, you're not having to worry about your march coming in too soon.